I'm Jill Harani. I am the VP of Marketing at Metazoa. And I want to welcome you to the Reset Button, where we chat with changemakers and status quo shakers in the Salesforce ecosystem about getting ahead, staying motivated, and moving society forward. This episode of the Reset Button features Emma BF, yay, who is a leadership and career coach for women in technology. Her mission is to inspire and empower women to step into leadership and own their power. I love that. As a leader in the Salesforce and nonprofit sector, she facilitates workshops on emotional intelligence, courageous communication, and personal transformation. And today she'll be talking to us about how to take your admin career to the next level. So welcome, Emma.
Hi, Jill. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm so excited to talk to you today. I gave a little intro, obviously, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sounds great. Hello, everyone out there on the internet. Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from so we can feel your energy. As Jill said, my name is Emma BF. I have a very long last name. It's Bloxberg Fire Ovid. So that's why we go with Emma BF.
Okay, I was going to ask you that, and I'm like, is that important? Well, maybe not.
One thing to know about me is I used to be a camp counselor.
Oh.
I worked with kiddos ages 7 to 12. And so they all just called me Emma Best Friend.
Aw, I like that.
Yeah, you can think of me as that. Really, there were just a lot of Emmas growing up, and we needed a way to differentiate each other. So, Jill, as you mentioned, I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 5 years now, and I started my career in the nonprofit sector. I was working in program management, working one-on-one with low-income students and families who were looking to get to college and create epic results in their lives. So when I stepped into the nonprofit sector, technology was not on my radar at all. I was just working with families one-on-one because I was a people person. I cared about the mission. And our entire program was being run on spreadsheets. And the left part of my brain was getting so aggravated by how ineffective this system was that I knew there had to be a better way. And at the time, our organization was using Salesforce mainly for fundraising efforts. But at that time, we knew we wanted to make a move and use Salesforce to manage program management, our operations, and do a full end-to-end system implementation. And I was nominated by our COO at the time to lead the project.
Wow.
And I was so resistant. I was like, why are you going to put me in charge of a technology project? Like, I am a people person. I'm a program manager. And he said to me, I see that you're a systems thinker. I see that you're constantly challenging us to do things differently, to do things better, to question the way that how we can run our organization more smoothly. And so I stepped into that leadership role and led a full implementation project with a team of pro bono Salesforce consultants.
Wow.
And that's where my mind opened up to this world of Salesforce and to my own abilities and potential. And so I stepped into the Salesforce ecosystem as a consultant working with nonprofits to implement Salesforce and other third-party tools. And after 3 years of that, I have now pivoted into leadership coaching. Because what I see and the admins that I worked with my time as a consultant is that admins have, in my perspective, the greatest leadership potential. Because they're the ones who are in the system, they're in the teams, they're really the center of technology. And when you're the center of something, you are the leader of that.
Absolutely.
And so what tools are there for admins to know how to lead effectively, to know how to communicate effectively? I have not seen a lot of them, so I stepped into it. So started creating resources, started presenting workshops at Salesforce conferences and local user groups. And I've seen how powerful these leadership conversations and content has been that I myself took my career to the next level and now support women in tech, Salesforce admins, Salesforce consultants, people transitioning into tech to own their power. That's a little bit about me.
That's awesome. I love that. I did not know that about you, and so I just learned something. And you're right. It's like the admin is in the center dealing with all the stakeholders and dealing with all the engineers that are trying to release everything and manage all of that and get people's buy-in and all of that stuff. So it is a lot, absolutely. So that is fantastic. So you said 5 years ago you got into the Salesforce ecosystem. How did you get, it sounds like you were an accidental admin, what we call an accidental admin. You were kind of put in this role. You didn't decide this is going to be my career. So how did you jump into the ecosystem?
Yeah, I felt like I was a nominated admin. Like someone nominated me and I was like, I don't know if I want this nomination.
Yeah.
But it worked out that one of the consultants on the pro bono team, her name is Leandria Streeter. Shout out to Leandria. She's the leader of the Women in Tech DC user group. So she was getting this user group up and running in DC, and she invited me to one of their first ever meetings. I remember it was like 4 of us in a WeWork in DC.
Oh, wow.
And now the Women in Tech DC user group has hundreds of members. And so by me continuing to show up to those meetings month after month, I built my squad, or my Salesforce squad, a powerful group of women leaders in the ecosystem who saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they kind of like sent the fish hook out there and they were like, come on, Emma, you can do it. Like,
yeah,
you can step into this and own it. And at the end of the day, it came down to relationships and trusting that what people saw in me, I did not yet see in myself.
Yeah. So we have so many things to talk about. First of all, I want to make sure that everybody knows that you can ask questions throughout this session. And I know that Emma would love to answer them. Also, I kind of want to start with, I was recently on a world tour, watching it virtually. And something hit me. Also been reading a little bit about it and just talking to people in the ecosystem. There are so many people that are, because of COVID, I think they're reevaluating their careers. And I know a lot of people that are coming into the ecosystem brand spanking new, wanting to, go out there, maybe get their admin certification and try to, forge a path for themselves in this amazing ecosystem that we work with. So what would you recommend to these people? Are you finding this yourself when you talk to people?
100%. I'm hearing it in all areas of the sector. So I'm hearing more people wanting to pivot into tech since COVID, if they were laid off or they were downsizing or they've realized that they want to work from home, like full remote. I'm seeing a huge wave of people coming into tech who don't want to go back to the office. And then within tech, I experienced in 2020, a lot of people really like holding on to their jobs, which I totally get because there was a time where if you had your job, like you were just grateful to have a job. And now that things are reopening up, companies are starting to reinvest in hiring. And we've all just had this, like, the name of this session is the reset button. Right. I feel like everyone has their own reset button. And the first thing that I always ask my clients and people I talk to who are wanting to pivot or level up their career is like, what do you want? What do you want and why? Because I find that a lot of times, and I was guilty of this too, I would just be going to the next job because it was what other people told me I needed to do.
Right. I think a lot of us do that.
I felt trapped and I needed to hit the eject button out of a really toxic culture, workplace. But really pausing there and asking, what do I want? And why do I want it? Do I want to be an admin? Do I want to be a business analyst? Do I want to be a consultant? Do I want to open my own cupcake shop? Like it could be anything. And then
right.
Why do I want it? Do I want the flexibility of working from home? Do I want to be in ownership of building a system because I love making things more effective? Starting with that what and that why, that really brings it back to you. rather than what other people are saying is the very first step that I do with all of my clients and anyone I talk to in the ecosystem.
Right. I think, with digital transformation, I mean, with COVID, I think a lot of companies right now are going, oh, we really need to, make ourselves accessible, maybe adopting Salesforce for the first time. So there's a lot of people out there that are hiring in these positions, and maybe people are like, I don't know what I want to be exactly, but I know that I love Salesforce and this ecosystem because maybe I know somebody in the ecosystem and I know that this is a fantastic place to be. But it's almost like, I think of it as if you're moving to a new town when you're in high school. So you're like a freshman in high school and you're walking into this campus and everyone has developed relationships and this, you've got this huge campus and you're like, what do I do now? Like, how do I get myself, to these people? How do I introduce myself? How do I know what I want to do? Where do I go from here? Like, do you have anything to provide there with the people that you work with? I mean, you've got to deal with some of this where people are just like, I don't know what to do.
Totally. And it's a big, the Salesforce ecosystem is like the Pacific Ocean. You're just like, where do I go?
Yeah.
I'm just like swimming in here. And I think it's important to know that that's totally normal. I mean, it's like, it's going to like the biggest university out there, right? And the first thing I want to demystify is the thought that you don't know what you want to do. Like, I think that's a myth. I believe that you actually do know what you want. And oftentimes you just haven't had the space or the support to get clear on what you want. Again, because if we're rushing all of the time or we're just listening to other people or we're comparing ourselves, that's my other tip for people who are stepping in the Salesforce ecosystem. Like, don't spend all day on LinkedIn seeing how everyone's getting a million certifications and getting new jobs if that pulls up, like if fear comes up or all the comparison stuff happens. But the first thing is get clear on your what and get clear on your why. Then there really comes a time where you got to start getting yourself out there. And that can be scary. So I want you to just take it one person at a time. Find one person in the Salesforce ecosystem who maybe you've been following on LinkedIn or you've been following on Twitter or you've seen in the Salesforce ecosystem and you like what they're putting out there. A lot of people will see people that they like and never reach out. And so by simply sending one message by saying, hey, my name is Emma. I am new to the Salesforce ecosystem and I am looking for, enter what you want, enter why you want it. So it's like your Mad Lib introduction, and invite them into a 30-minute coffee chat. Just starting with one person, I find to be very powerful because the first person is the hardest person.
Absolutely.
Jill, in this ecosystem, I mean, there are incredibly kind people.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I love it.
So one conversation, in my experience, washes away some of the fear, some of the doubt, and gets you into this place of like, oh, I can talk to another human being in the Salesforce ecosystem. And like, now I have the confidence to go ask another person and another person. And then it's like a muscle where you've got some momentum and you can do it more often.
Yeah. And obviously there's tons of things that you can get involved in, all these groups, if you're a woman in tech, you can get involved in the women in tech groups. You can do all these user groups, join. And but let's say you are an admin, you're just starting out, or even you're not just starting out. There's part of a myth, I would say. I've heard some people expecting an admin to have a technical background or a technical ability because, I think even people that are hiring maybe for this position think it's got to require some sort of technical background, right? Because they're not necessarily sure what they're hiring. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, this is something I see often, and particularly in the nonprofit sector, which is my sector. So I feel like I can be a little honest about what happens.
Yeah.
Is that, there are organizations that don't understand Salesforce, and they don't understand that an admin does not have to be a developer, and that 90% of the customizations that an org needs to get stood up can be served by an admin. And so one thing that I have used before as a tactic for that is to go to trailhead.com, I think /careers, where it has the outline of all of the different roles. And it gives literally a step-by-step of what the role is, how it can work. And you can actually send that to your hiring manager or someone who doesn't understand the differences, or study that page so that you can effectively communicate what your role as an admin is. Because part of the job interview process is communicating your value. Not just communicating the value of your past experiences and your transferable skills, but also like the value of this role and the value you bring to this role. So if you're out there and you're getting a sense that they're asking for too many technical requirements, like 7 certifications and 7 years of experience to like just stand up Sales Cloud or just stand up Service Cloud, and like, that you can do it, how can you effectively communicate to them that you have the skills to serve in this admin role and how that is what they need?
Right. I agree with that. It's just, it can be really, really frustrating when you hear or you read blogs and all this stuff. And it's like, I'm not technical and I don't have to be technical. I think it just takes somebody who's, really, I don't know, just like you said, this person that saw what you had, this ability that you had, and said, hey, I think you would be great at this. So let's say you're an admin, you are, just getting through the end of hopefully a pandemic, and it's been kind of, okay, I'm in this role. I would like to see myself leveling up, becoming something more in this role. How do you suggest that where do they start? How do you, especially in today's world where I don't even know if I should be asking this question because I'm lucky that I even have my job right now, But as you say, things are looking up, things are changing, more jobs are becoming available. So where do you suggest somebody starts having that conversation?
Yeah. First thing is, if you have not had a performance review in the last year, which some places don't even have formal performance reviews. So that would look like you have a sit down with your manager where you're reviewing everything that you created this last year. You talk about where you want to go in your career, and you ask them, what growth do you see possible for me? If you have not had a performance review in the last year, it is time to reach out to your manager and ask for a 1-hour performance review session. Because the first thing to do is to set up time with your manager so that they know you are ready to have this conversation. But like even with the job search process, I'm going to bring you back and ask you, what do you want? Do you want to be a solution architect? Do you want to be a people manager? Do you want to be a developer? Do you want to be an advanced admin? Do you want to be an evangelist? Like all of these different things, again, think about, what are the things that you love to do in your job right now? And what are the things you don't love doing that you don't want to do anymore?
Yeah.
Simply by you can literally do a T-chart. What do I love? What do I not love? And then what do you love is going to turn into where you want to go. And you can bring that to your conversation with your manager and at least ask them for a raise. Say that this is what I've created in the last year. Oftentimes when I'm coaching people to go into promotion conversations, we list out everything that they have done in the last year. And then we line it up with what they want moving forward. Because if you have metrics, if you have results of what you've already done that's in line with what you want to do more of, and you bring that into a conversation, your manager is going to be like, oh, wow, they are already doing this, and this is where they want to go. And I don't want to lose them. So what do you want?
Right.
It's such an easier conversation to start there.
But do you find that people are, have a fear of the rejection or a fear of that, the unknown of what that response will be, or how to handle the conversation and some of the difficulties that are, happening during that conversation of, I'm coming in, I think that I deserve this.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of a hard thing for some people to do, right? And so how do you tell people to navigate that?
Yeah. The first thing is to name your fear. Like, when we're nervous, it can often feel overwhelming. And I had this going into one of my salary negotiation conversations when I was a consultant. I was sweating before going into the conversation. So I get it. These things are scary. Yeah. I've cried once during a salary negotiation. Like, I've been told hell no in the middle of a salary negotiation. So like, I've done all the wrong things in a salary negotiation. And it's naming your fear. Like you said, Jill, is it fear of rejection? Is it fear of the unknown? Is it fear of losing your job? Like, just by naming that fear and asking yourself, okay, what's the worst case scenario? Like, actually write down what's the worst case scenario. Because in my experience, once people actually write it down, it has less power over them. Mm-hmm. So that's how you get set going into it. Because wherever there's a worst case scenario, there's a best case scenario. And my experience is that we live in the worst case scenarios all the time.
Yeah.
Like, we go into literally every conversation thinking, I'm going to get fired. They're going to hate me. I'm never going to be liked again. I'm never going to make more money. And that's exhausting. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the best case scenario? You get the raise. You get the promotion. They offer you even more money than you were asking for. You're building trust with your manager. And until people are in that mind space, I actually advise you to not go into the conversation until you've identified your best case scenario. Mm. Because simply with that mindset shift, when you're in the conversation, you already know what's the worst case scenario is usually that they'll say no and nothing else bad will happen. Mm-hmm. But then when you're in the conversation and if things are getting dicey, or like me, crying or sweating or whatever, like, also remembering that you have permission to pause the conversation. Mm. If things are going off the rails and the person isn't hearing you, or things are really spiraling out, you can always say, you know what? I think I need some time. Can we pause this conversation and come back next week? Like, I see people thinking that you have to just sit in the crap if it turns into a crappy conversation. And like, you can always pause and just say, you know what? I don't think I'm in the right space right now. Can we take some time and then come back to this?
Yeah. I remember seeing or hearing a podcast that you did with Jillian Bruce. I love Jillian Bruce. You were talking about assertive communication. And, I think there's maybe for me, I now know what assertive communication is, but I think it kind of, for me, it could get mixed up a little bit with this aggressive communication, or feeling like I'm not getting my words across because I'm putting too many other factors in that are kind of mixing up what I'm trying to say. So can you talk a little bit about that and what that looks like?
Yeah. And I'm so glad you called that out, Jill, because it's assertive and aggressive communication is oftentimes a tightrope walk, especially for women, because there is research that shows that when a woman is communicating assertively, it is received and understood as aggression, because those are not the attributes that we are used to seeing women display. So if you're a woman out there and you're feeling this, like there is a psychological effect happening in the other person. So it's not about you. But this is why when you're prepping to go into these conversations, we want to get really clear on what you're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, going into a job interview, going into a negotiation conversation or a raise or a promotion conversation, bringing in as much information as you have as possible helps bring the tone and the content of the communication back to the facts. So when I get emotional in a call, I'll literally go back to my notes where I say, like, as an admin, I had how many process builders I built, the amount of time, the number of trainings that I did for my users, the amount of time that was saved by a new page layout that I created for data entry. Like, by writing all of those things down, again, metrics tied to what I loved doing, I could then bring that into the conversation so that if things went sideways or I could tell that I was being perceived as aggressive, it's like, well, here are the facts.
Mm-hmm. Get back to the facts.
Yeah, look at the facts. Do you have questions about what I have done, what I have created, or questions about the impact of these results? And in my experience, that usually just shifts the whole conversation. And if it doesn't, then you can pause. If someone is like, I've been called a penny pincher before, like in a conversation. And then I started tearing up, and that was when I decided to stop the conversation.
Yeah.
And then I decided that day that I was going to leave. So there's also this feeling that the other person has all the power, either in the employer or who you're interviewing with. And it's like, don't give that person your power. Like, if you're stepping into the Salesforce ecosystem or tech in general, like, there are so many jobs. And I know it doesn't always feel like that. And I get that. People I work with, there's a lot of fear, especially if you're transitioning into it. But just knowing how many jobs there are out there and how many different companies, it can help reshift your mindset to say, like, this person does not have power over me in my life. Like, I have my own power. I am my own authority, and I can go and do whatever I want.
Right. Yeah. And when you go in, I mean, I don't know if you're finding this these days, maybe budgets are still tight and people are still kind of holding on to, we're not really able to give you a raise. Sometimes going in there maybe and having other things that you could negotiate, maybe not necessarily looking at it's either this or this, are there things in the middle that we can talk about? Maybe if we do XYZ, I can get a bonus, or, are there other things, maybe an extra week vacation, or, something kind of coming up with other things that you can lay out and ask for, and just, the discomfort of maybe that awkward silence, or, because they're not prepared. They're prepared maybe for you coming in asking for a raise or a promotion, right? But they're not prepared for some of the other things that you might think about laying out that are valuable to you. So, is that something that you've had people go in and say, hey, make sure that you have other things that you might want, because they're not going to just hand them to you. You have to ask a lot of times, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Jill. I mean, you got it. We literally, as part of this prep, I'm saying, where get clear on what you want to say. We'll do like a negotiation decision tree. It's literally like, this is your top order priority, which was like, for example, a $10,000 salary increase. If they say yes to it, what are we going to do? If they say no to it, what are they going to do? And that way you literally have your decision tree. You put it right up against the computer if you're virtual.
Yeah.
And that, again, takes away the fear. So if the fear is unknown or the fear is rejection, then if they say no to the salary raise, you literally just follow your line and you're like, okay, how about a $5,000 raise plus a $5,000 professional development budget? And that's the other piece that I think you're touching on too, is the way that you think about it. Sometimes it feels like you got to go in there with your armor up.
Mm-hmm.
You're like ready to like take what's yours and this is it. But if you go into the conversation like that, like people are going to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
When truthfully, especially if you have a written job offer and you're negotiating on that, or you're asking for a promotion, the other person wants to hire you.
Mm-hmm.
Your manager wants to retain you. And Jill, you know how expensive it is when someone leaves a company.
Oh, yes, it is.
I don't think enough employees understand that. So work with the person. Like go into the conversation being open to collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, I remember wanting to negotiate a raise for myself. And my manager at the time, she said, okay, that's actually the highest in our pay band. So what else can we do? And so I asked for that same amount in a professional development budget. And she said, great, I have a professional development budget that literally hasn't been tapped yet.
Ah, that's awesome. Yeah. Who knew?
Like, who knew? And then it was easy. It wasn't this like, I'm ready to take you down because like I got to stand for what I want.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So much more ease.
Yeah. So let's say you are going in to negotiate because you were just hired. That's always so uncomfortable. It's like, I really want this job. Maybe it's the only one I've been given an offer, I don't know if I'm going to get other offers. I've been interviewing with other people. That negotiation part can be very uncomfortable for people. What are some of the top maybe 3 pieces of advice do you give to somebody when they walk in to an interview, or that, not an interview, but that part where you're negotiating the offer?
Yeah. So the first thing is when you're in that conversation, you express gratitude and bring the excitement. Like if they've given you a job offer, like tell them how excited you are to work for this company and why. Why does this role light you up? Why does it align with what you're looking for? What of the company values are you excited about? So the first is gratitude, because that already sets the tone that like you want to work with them and you're not like coming up with all your armor.
Right.
The second thing is you reiterate your value. So you reiterate, it could be the number of years of experience. It could be successful projects that you've managed that are similar to the job responsibilities. It could be that you're excited to be a voice for the company in the Salesforce ecosystem. If you speak at conferences or you've been on podcasts or you're a leader in the ecosystem, just remind them how great you are and how your greatness aligns with the role that they're offering. And then the third, once you've done gratitude, say your value, then you just ask. So based on my experience and based on what I'm excited to bring to the table, I believe that my position is worth $95K. What do you think? Pause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think?
I love that. The pause, the allowing that awkward silence, just letting them think about it and putting it in their court, right? Yeah, that's fantastic. Those are some great tips, especially the gratitude. I love, one of the things I love about Salesforce so much is every single presentation, every single time you hear somebody talk, it's like, let's start off with thank you for being a customer, or thank you for being a partner. Thank you for being part of this ecosystem. So I think that's absolutely very valuable tip to be grateful and excited before you start that negotiation. But what if I'm I'm working from home. Now everybody's pretty much working from home. And
Mhm.
I'm having a really hard time standing out or being seen. I know that you said, make sure that you know what you want, make sure you have a list of everything that you've brought to the table or everything you've done. But, are there tips on standing out a little bit more to, maybe you have a huge team and you're kind of not really seen as much. You're kind of a little more behind the scenes. How do you stand out? How do you make yourself known to your manager, your leadership? Where do you start?
Yeah. So if you don't know what makes you different, then that's the first step, is clarifying what makes you different. And there are two ways that you can go about this. One is to come up with what I call your badass list. Like on a piece of paper, write down 10 moments in your life where you felt like a total badass. And it could be at work, it could be in your life, but just those moments where you're so freaking proud of what you did. And then from that list, you identify what skill or superpower was it about me in that moment that I loved. And so by looking at your skills and looking at your badass moments, already what's coming to life is what makes you different. And if you get stuck there, which I know some people do because we don't like to brag about ourselves or
Right.
stop to think about what we've done, you can text 5 coworkers or friends, message, and ask them, what about me is unique? What do you love about me? What do you see in me?
Mm-hmm.
And until you have that clarity, like I start there. Get very clear on why you're incredible, why you're a badass, and what other people see in you. And then you get to tell other people why you're a badass.
Right.
You get to tell other people why you're special. And that could look in a multitude of different ways. You could just start sharing your wins with your team. Weekly shout outs in Slack because you're proud of these moments. You had a great client call. You built this new workflow. You built a complex flow process that now does XYZ. Give yourself the shout out in front of other people so that A, they can celebrate with you, B, so that they know what you're doing, and C, so that they are clear why you're unique. So that would be it, is get clear on why you're a badass, either from yourself or you ask your squad, and then start sharing those wins so that people get that visibility and you really start to put yourself out there based on the things you want to do more of.
Right. And I think just by saying that, gives me this anxiety sometimes, because I think a lot of people have a hard time maybe putting something in Slack hey, I just did this. And it's just hit send. Just send it. Put it out there. Don't be afraid to celebrate your wins and celebrate the things that you bring to the table. Oftentimes it's just hard, to brag about yourself. You feel oh, I'm bragging. I don't want to, sound like this person who wants to brag or whatever. But sometimes it's, I know for me, if I put something out there, I'm not looking for someone to pat me on the back necessarily. I'm celebrating it myself, right? I'm so excited, and I just think it's great, and people will be like, "Good job." Yay. But it's uncomfortable sometimes. So, obviously you do workshops with women, and you help through some of these difficulties, right? And so talk to us a little bit about what you offer in your workshops and what you do, and some of the success that you've had in your workshops, some of the clients that you've had that you're like, wow, this is amazing. They really took what I said and they ran with it.
Yeah, I love this. Well, this whole process we're talking about with the badass list, I'm actually running a free masterclass tomorrow, Wednesday at noon Eastern, on how to lead your own way.
Yes, I was going to plug you on that for sure. You have to put that in the link. later.
Well, and it's about going through this badass list process, because in my experience, like you said, Jill, when I'm by myself, I go into that worst case scenario of like, well, if I put my celebration in Slack, what are people going to think about me? Oh, they're going to judge me. Oh, they're going to think I'm bragging. And in my experience, it isn't until you're in a Zoom room of other women leaders or other people as admins, and you're all hearing each other's badass lists, that it's like, oh, I get how powerful this gets. I get how easy this can be. And that's one of my workshops, is getting out of your own way, step into confidence, and to step into your next level of leadership. And then a couple of weeks ago, I presented to Salesforce's Global Women's Network on how to have courageous conversations. So literally what you and I are talking about, Jill, like you want to have this conversation, you don't know how to prepare for it or how to, dodge all of the ickiness in the conversation. It walks you through a step-by-step process to bring you into a space where you feel confident and courageous to have these conversations. And because in my experience, these are the only two things that are holding women back in tech, is having the confidence to ask what they want, to go for what they want, and then having the leadership tools to have courageous conversations, to have effective negotiation calls. And just with these few tips, I mean, my clients average a 10 to 15% increase either on their base salary or on the job offers that they get.
Fantastic. That's success.
So like, it's out here, y'all can do this. Like, it's really just, it's okay that we were not, a lot of us were not taught how to do this effectively. And if I could bring this curriculum to every high school or college in the country, I would, because it's what I did not get. And then I had to fail through a bunch of negotiations.
Which is not bad to fail. You learn from
it,
right?
Now I have no shame. Because I'm like, it's cool. I may cry.
Been there. It's fine.
I'm still here. The worst case scenario in my head didn't actually happen. And now I'm stronger and more resilient because of it.
So be sure to put your link in on your masterclass tomorrow, so that Facebook. People can join. I think about when you say that, to every college and, wish you could train it. There are a lot of seniors now graduating, and here they are joining the workforce in such a different type of situation. I mean, am I going to be in an office? Am I going to be online? I'm sitting by myself all the time. How do I stay motivated? All that stuff. I think just following you and kind of all these tips that you give are going to make a huge difference. So what's maybe like the last bit of advice before we close this session that you want to get out there and say to anybody who's listening or will watch the playback on this?
Yeah. Thank you, Jill. We're talking about how to take your admin career to the next level. And it's exciting and terrifying to know that it's all on you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's exciting because you get to choose what you want to do. You get to choose how much money you want to make. You get to choose what type of job you want. And to know that to reach out for support from a coach, a mentor, a sponsor, a friend, so that you don't feel like you have to do it alone. That's the biggest thing that I see, particularly for women in tech, is this belief that I have to do it on my own and that there's only one way it can happen. So be open to possibilities. Be open to a higher level of leadership and a higher version for yourself, and then reach out for support. And if you're watching the replay or you're on here now, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, at Emma BF, on Instagram, on Twitter. I'll put my information in the Facebook group so you can connect, so that you know you're not alone and you know that you can do this, and that, Jill, thank you for creating this space for people. I know, and I get so hard that you care about this ecosystem and you also want people to take their careers to the next level. And so you also keep doing what you're doing, because this space
Absolutely.
wouldn't be without you.
Will do.
Thank
And I so appreciate you coming on. I love all the advice that you gave, and I would really encourage everybody to follow. So please do put your information in the Facebook Metazoa Live page. And everybody, that's all the time we have for this episode of the Reset Button. So thank you so much for joining. Don't miss our next episode on April 26th at 10 a.m. Pacific. We'll be talking to Karen Manji about how to build your brand virtually. So I will see you all the next time on the Reset Button. Bye, everyone.
Bye.